All right, I think I got the high sign. So good evening and welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of May 15th, 2014. As usual, we'll have David Williams, our town administrator, read the draft agenda, and I'm already going to have one change to it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll start off with public comment and then look at the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. And 6:20, Board of Selectmen public hearing for the renewal of the cable television license of Comcast of Massachusetts, Inc., and vote as to whether, at this time, to renew said cable license or issue a preliminary assessment that the cable license should not yet be renewed. And after that, Stormwater GIS update with CM&D Director Ed Wagner, Conservation Agent Bridget Graziano, and Planner Gino Carlucci. After that, looking at Eagle Scout proclamations, and then under the TA report, we get a number of items for to review town meeting actions, set out a plan for taking care of annual appointments over the next month, look at the Water Study Committee, vote to extend the borrowing for a CM&D vehicle, review Abbey Road appraiser proposal, and look at police collective bargaining agreement. Then we'll look at upcoming meeting topics, and then selectmen reports, and then approval of warrants and set the next meeting. In executive session, we have non-union contract negotiations set up for executive session.
All right, good. And we're, although it says we had discussed strategy with respect to pending litigation of the Canon et al. Versus the others, we're not going to have that discussion, so I want to amend the agenda for that. Other than that, any other amendments, gentlemen, for the agenda here?
No.
Take a motion to approve the agenda then?
Approve.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Great. Okay, we'll keep moving. We're now open for public comment. Any public comment? Okay, I'm going to go left to right. How's that? Pat Cassell.
Hi, Pat Cassell, Western Avenue. I was one of the team members for the Farm Pond Reservation Cleanup Day, and I just wanted to say thank you to the people who came down to Farm Pond, and so I typed up a little report, which I will read because I tend to talk too long. Sherborn Cleanup Day was a huge success at Farm Pond Reservation. From 9 to 3, the team picked up the trash, although hardly any was found. I understand that a lot of the people who go to Farm Pond, the early morning swimmers, tend to pick up the trash all the time, so I was happy to hear that. But all of the leaves and sticks that had accumulated were removed from the beach and all of the paths, roadways, and around the buildings. Debris was removed from the surface, uncovering the catch basins on Lake Street near the boat landing gate, at the end of the cart path, and at the end of the walkway that goes over the hill to the beach. And I'd like to thank the following who participated in the massive cleanup down there: Ron Jansen, Amy Davis, Mike Balmer, Natalie Doyle, Karen Baruti, Stephen and Quig Tate, Mary McKenna, Ian Bruce, Hannah Bruce, and the 6th grade girls soccer team members came down. They were completing a service project and decided that it was going to be helping out at Farm Pond. So I hope I pronounce these right. Ceres Balmer, Jillian Davis, Carolyn Gallagher, Sabrina Doyle, Bella Tate, Olivia Goganian, Mary Jo Smith, and Percy Baruti. I'd also like to acknowledge Bertha Rifkin, who was walking by, saw what we were doing, took a recycle bag, and picked up trash as she walked along Lake Street on her normal walk. And Rick, I guess it's Colito, who cleaned up North and South Main Streets and had a lot to say about how we should really do this more often and keep Sherborn clean, because he said we don't really want it to look like Nicaragua as we're entering town. So every little bit helps, and those are the people I interacted with. I don't know about the rest of the town, but I really think that a thank you is in order to those people who did come out, especially to help clean up. And Farm Pond looks great.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Pat,
Okay.
for that update. That's terrific. We had those folks helping out. Maybe, Ed, when you get up later, you can give us a brief quickie talk about the rest of the town on that cleanup, how that went from your perspective. Okay, so I had another hand up, I think, going from my left to right here. Yes, Bridget.
Hi, Bridget Graziano, Conservation Agent, and I just wanted it to be on TV that the Conservation Commission is seeking a new member, and I want to thank Julia Jacobson for her service on the commission, and that we will be seeking a new member with the expiration term of June 2015. And you can submit your resume or letter of interest to the Selectmen's office or the Conservation office.
Okay, and we have a note of that on the website, I think, right? And there's a form that's typically completed for submission, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about the process on that.
Great, yep, great. So moving along, I see Elliot.
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main Street, but you know that. We had an election this week, and Paul Durensis was re-elected selectman.
Congrats, Paul.
However, I want everyone to know that I got 17 write-in votes.
All right, Elliot, congrats to you.
3 years ago, Paul ran unopposed. I got 13 write-in votes.
You got more supporters.
So this is a 25% increase.
Coming after you, Paul.
So I'm coming. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but I want to thank these 17 people. And even though it is significant in my heart, thank you very much.
All right, well done, Elliot.
If there's anything I can do to help you, Paul, let me know.
You're going to be my ultimate.
All right, there, I see Carol, yes.
But you left out Harley.
No, Carol, I'm moving around. Harley's last. We'll save the best for last. How's that, Harley, huh?
Working up the...
I was waiting, I'm last.
Oh, okay.
I was wanting to go first.
Carol Marple, Town Clerk. Elliot's already stolen my thunder, but I thought I would just offer a quick recap on the election. We had 528 people vote, which is 18% of our registered voters. So we had a little pool going along during the day to see if we would surpass the town meeting turnout, and we did, but not by very much. Very, very small thing. So I would like to, with your indulgence, just read the winners. We have Corey Lincoln, re-elected as moderator, Paul Durensis, re-elected as selectman, myself, re-elected as town clerk, Jean Rosso as assessor, Ann Hovey for school committee, Scott Embry for the Salwin Academy trustees, 3 library trustees this year, Mary Moore, James Murphy, and Jennifer Searle. Brian Moore for Water Commissioner, Jean Hom for Cemetery Commission, 2 spots for Planning Board, Chris Tolman and Marion Neutra. Regional School Committee, Richard Robinson, re-elected. Board of Health, Chris Quinn. Recreation, Ray Weiss. And the 3 ballot questions, all 3 passed. I will point out that the margin for ballot questions passing seems to get a little tighter every year. And the other thing I would like to do is just to let you know that today I completed the packet to go to the Attorney General. So, as you all know, but everybody at home may not know, when we pass bylaw changes at town meeting, they need to go to the Attorney General for approval. So, and now we get to submit those online, so we get a faster turnaround time. I like to let those things gel a little bit, so I won't actually be submitting it till Monday, so I can go back and give it one last check for errors. But then the Attorney General's Municipal Law Office has 90 days to approve. Because most clerks submit online and we get our approvals online, the turnaround time is much less, and we don't have really anything controversial or very complicated this time. So I would expect them to be back relatively quickly, although the Attorney General can always ask for an extension of another 90 days or as many extensions as she chooses. In addition to that, Let's see, we accepted several state statutes, and those go to the secretary. We have 2 special acts, which will be filed next week in the legislature. And what else?
Carol, what are those acts?
The 2 that are our special acts. One is to authorize our town administrator to sign warrants, and the other is to change the Board of Selectmen from 3 members to 5. And the other thing that I do as a follow-up, well, one of the things we do as a follow-up, I am also charged to send notice of all borrowings to the Department of Revenue. So I'm just letting you know that all those things are in the works.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions?
Can I just say that, first of all, I want to thank people who voted in the election, and thank you for returning me to the Board of Selectmen. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve the town, and I look forward to serving with my distinguished colleagues. But I wasn't the only one on the ballot, as you pointed out. A lot of people have come forward to serve this town, and all of them deserve thanks for their service to the town. Most of the positions are unpaid, as is the Board of Selectmen. This town could not
You
run.
don't get a check?
Not like yours.
Yeah, yeah.
Under the table.
Most of the people in this community serve the community without any pay at all. And we could not operate as a town without that kind of volunteerism, without that kind of caring for this community. So I thank everyone, and I think they deserve recognition for coming forward and standing for election and holding all these positions in the town.
I completely
Okay,
agree.
great.
My office has 2 big, fat notebooks, and that's where our volunteers sign when they're sworn to office. And our town could not run without all of our volunteers. Absolutely correct. Thank you.
All right, great. Just a point, David, we have a 6:20 public hearing, so
Yes.
we need to go to that, do we?
Yes, you have to
And
do
then
it at the exact.
At 6:20, so I apologize to those who were waiting for public comment. We'll catch you on the flip side, but we have to open a public hearing at this time, correct? Right? So,
Waiting for Bill Sullivan.
so,
He wanted to flip it. I don't know
so
if
we
that's-
can, if you can, so we can wait here, talking to my administrative experts, since they're not quite ready. I'll entertain a public comment
Yeah,
while we're
sure.
at it then. Yes, Harley.
Harley Kaplan, 68 Maple Street. And I approached the selectmen about a month or so ago to come up with some revenue enhancement. And the reason why I did so is because as the top officials in our community, I'm hoping that you would have the most say in moving things forward. And so what I have done is I've come up with a list of revenue enhancers for the town. And based upon what I've done in my study, the revenue enhancers can raise anywhere from $4 to $6 million a year annually to the town. And one of the biggest issues dealing with the town was the taxes are too high. And so what I try to do is address how do I reduce the taxes in the town, how do I generate revenue, and how do I accomplish the goals of providing housing in the community. And I had the opportunity to grab some of the maps, which I think would be interesting for you gentlemen to look at, of all different community, all different organizations that own different land in the town, all different color codes. We have 8 or 9 different organizations that own land in the town. But when I looked at how we're going to generate revenue for the town, the most important thing came out to be that we need to declare an economic zone in the downtown area. An area no more than a half a mile in which certain zoning pertains just to that downtown area. That economic zone is not unlike the ones that they have in Boston, which allows for certain type of development. And we need to look at what resources the town has to generate revenue. And when I looked at this time and time again, it came out that the fields behind the fire station, and and the tennis courts. We're by far one of the best places to put development. And I'll talk about the type of development. Take those fields, move them over. There's 90 acres or so right next to the school. There's plenty of space for the fields. Build a mercantile type.
So Harley, I don't mean to cut you off, but we do have a public hearing we're going to get to. And you're talking some very big picture
Yes.
stuff. And the last time you came to us with some great thoughts, the way we handled it is we said, we don't have it on the agenda for that evening. We would look into it and then set it up as another agenda item, which we did do, and so now efforts are underway to come up with what will be involved with affordable housing and so forth that you had suggested we look at. What I would suggest here is, because you're talking you have some good ideas, and you've looked at this very carefully, that we schedule an agenda item in advance. You provide us some materials to bone
I
up
can do
on,
that, David.
and you get that to David.
Okay,
And so
great.
we could do that at a future, and really give it some good time, because I think you're on to some great stuff. Some of it can be controversial. If I were a recreational commissioner, I'd be concerned about my fields and so forth. So
It's going
so
to
if we
be.
could do it that way, Harley, I think that would be great, because I appreciate that you're caring about this and looking into it. And
Great, and I'll get back to you. Thank you.
that's perfect.
And Harley, I would make a suggestion also, the planning board is really front and center on zoning issues, and to the extent you have an opportunity to talk with them about some of these ideas, they may be helpful too in pushing those along.
And Mike, I have talked to some of the people on it, and, but again, I'm here just to give a general idea.
Understood, yeah.
And then move
No,
forward from there.
We
Thank you.
appreciate the info.
Thanks a lot. All right, so are we ready for a public hearing, or we?
We're all set.
Okay.
So nice to go last year.
So Sean, we'll get back to you, and we're going to public hearing, because we're a couple of minutes late while waiting on the
And then you're going back to
public.
public comment?
And then we'll go back to public comment, because we got now two people waiting.
Public comment, this is.
Yeah, this is very interesting. All right, so you're up, and we're opening this public hearing. Is there some particular language I'm supposed to do here?
You should vote to open the hearing.
Okay.
Move to open the hearing.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, we now officially opened our public hearing. It was duly noticed here, and if I knew which one of these notices to read here.
They're they're both the same, they do two different weeks.
Okay, but there's 12 of them on each page, so which one am I
No, I'm
looking
sorry,
at?
Keith.
You don't want to read the Framingham School lunch one.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking at.
I should have just highlighted.
This one, right here. Oh, here we are. Yes, okay, so we had a cable television license renewal legal notice. Town of Sherborn Board of Selectmen notice of public hearings regarding renewal of cable television license of Comcast of Massachusetts, Inc., Thursday, May 15, 2014, at 6:20 p.m. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Sherborn, as the cable television license issuing authority, will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 15, 2014, at 6:20 p.m. in room 204A of the Sherborn Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherborn, Mass., pursuant to 207 CMR 3.05, and any applicable cable television renewal license laws, regulations, or requirements regarding renewal of the cable television license with Comcast of Massachusetts, Inc., and any other issues which may be considered in such hearing. The public is invited and encouraged to attend. Any relevant applications, reports, statements, and/or amendments in the possession of a respective town to be considered at the hearings shall be available upon completion for public inspection, and reproduction at a reasonable fee at the Board of Selectmen's office during regular town hall hours. Board of Selectmen, Town of Sherborn. I think that's it. That's mighty small print. So welcome, gentlemen. Nice to see you. Good to see you.
So Doug Ambos, 31 Everett Street. I'm the chair of the Cable TV Advisory Committee. I'll join with Special Attorney Bill Solomon, and also representing Comcast, Mr. Frank Foss. And also join with other members of the Cable TV Advisory Committee, Bill Miller and Tom Oberst. We also have Art Crandall, who wasn't able to be with us right now. So we're here to get public comment, to hear people's concerns. I do have a couple things to read into the record. One is the letter that Bill sent you earlier. Another one is what you forwarded to us, Paul, from Elizabeth, the librarian, her comments on internet access, which is typically done out of as a good service from Comcast, and we'd like to read her letter. Bill, do you want to?
Well, maybe you want to read the letter in that I wrote over to the
Yep.
board. I think that'd be helpful. As you know, I wrote you a memorandum.
Yes,
in
thank you.
advance of
Appreciate
last night.
that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I thought
It was a
maybe-
little late last night. Did you
Yes,
do
I
that?
apologize.
Very, No, you were burning the midnight oil.
Town meeting, it's been, so if we could read that, if Doug, you want to read that, because I think it gives some of the substance of where procedurally and
Yes.
we are, and it also makes reference to what we feel is the fact that Comcast is a bit ahead of the curve from us on this, and we appreciate that, and we're trying to catch up so we can get this done, and we wanted to read that into the record.
All right. Of course, you wrote it. You sure you don't want to?
No, I can't if you like. Okay, thank you.
You make it bigger.
No, that's good, that's fine. Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I wrote to say that as the board is aware, a renewal cable television license is not yet completed. However, that in no way reflects the efforts of Comcast, but rather is a reflection on the time and coordination needed by the Cable Committee's volunteer chair and myself as counsel that we needed to do, as well as the need going forward to address a limited number of substantive issues, as we see it, in the next few weeks with Comcast, assuming their schedule allows for that. As such, I note that Comcast, more specifically its Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs, Frank Foss, who, as you know, has worked with the town, with Comcast and its predecessors for many years, has been diligent and cooperative while faithfully representing Comcast in this license renewal matter. And, of course, that's always been the case. In order to protect the legal interests of both parties while finalizing the cable license by means of informal negotiations as set out in the Cable Act, I'm forwarding, as previously discussed and discussed at the last meeting, the following motion for a vote by the Board of Selectmen at the meeting tomorrow evening. Move that the town vote the following preliminary assessment that the cable television license of Comcast of Massachusetts 1, Inc. should not be renewed pursuant to Section 626 of the Cable Act in order to protect the interest of all relevant parties and provide the best opportunity for the town and Comcast to reach an agreement regarding a new cable television renewal license. This is on the goal, our goal at least, would to try to complete this in the next 30 or 40 days. Oftentimes, this is called in the cable world a friendly denial, that we're not ready on our side we weren't to finalize the issue. We have our revised draft that's been provided to the committee that we're working on further tonight. And because of that, in order to protect the town's interest, Comcast interest, because this formal process, this is a friendly denial. For various reasons, often different reasons in different communities, this is something that's not uncommon in cable. The cable operator continues to operate during that time. And that's what the end of the memo says. So that would be my recommendation to the board tonight, is to vote this friendly denial to protect the interest. We're going to hear from the public. There may be some comment to have. I do not believe that this would be the forum to discuss to negotiate issues. Issues may come up. The board may have issues that he wants to put on the record. But this is not a negotiation session, and as such, I would leave any negotiation of issues to the informal process that we'll find out when Comcast is available to speak with us.
When we're ready to finalize, would you envision another public hearing?
I would, no, I wouldn't. I would, I think after this hearing, I think we can, close the public hearing. You could in theory keep it open, but I would not envision another public hearing. I would envision just an open meeting at which time there would be any questions or discussion by the board, and the board would decide at that time whether or not to enter into that informal agreement. I would expect at that point that document will be to your satisfaction, but that would be your decision at that time.
Is it customary in public hearings to give the basics of the agreement?
Well,
Particularly where it's still evolving here a bit.
right. With respect to what I believe will happen, that happens really 100% of the time, reaching an agreement through this informal process that's provided in the Cable Act, I think tonight would not be the night to discuss those issues.
Okay.
I think tonight would be the night, as you're doing, to hear from the public or to hear from the board about issues and needs and interests that you have concerns about, but not to engage in the informal process. This is more part of the
Yep, and we had a good discussion last time, so
those issues, right?
Yes.
And you can feel free to state those again. Mr. Foss is here. That's fine, and I think that would be helpful to finalizing the license. And I said, after tonight's meeting, your committee and Doug and myself are having a working session so that we can finalize what we view as the revised formal the informal document, to send that to Mr. Foss, so that we can move things ahead in a way that Mr. Foss has moved them to date.
I know Mr. Foss is here. He was aware of this friendly denial and understands the purpose.
Yeah,
of it.
I don't, he even suggested it would be a good approach, and I appreciate that, and I think we're both believe that you want to protect people's formal interest. I can't speak for him, I don't think he'll necessarily want to say it, but we know that in cable, there's a way to get to something that's in the interest of both parties, and that's what we want to do in the next few weeks in the informal process.
I would like to honor Mr. Foss. I worked with him 10 years ago. He was a straight shooter. He was a vigorous spokesperson and negotiator for Comcast, but was reasonable, fair, and a good person to work with. So I'm delighted to see that he's still here and still functioning, and he did a good job. Then
This is the 10th year anniversary of that signing.
Yeah, that's right. Good.
the other point I would make is last time we discussed this, I was concerned about the INET, what was going to happen to the INET. And part of that led to that letter from the library about their connection and their service. And I wonder if you could put that into the record.
Yeah.
Because we do want to continue to have service at the library that's free and available for.
So what we're talking about is the institutional network to do to video feed between buildings that we've proposed, and I think we have verbal buy-in that we would drop that requirement in town and instead replace that with what we at Dover Sherborn Cable think will really pay off is a direct connection between here and the studio in Dover, and that will allow a bunch of things. That institutional network is not the same as internet service provided free of charge to the library, which they have done in the past.
But on the first point, I understood that was going to be turned over to us. It wasn't going to be taken down.
That's part of.
Yeah, I would say that part would be, I think that it's a focus on the interest that, and this was discussed last time, that the board's made clear that you have an interest in making sure that PEG access programming that should be going live can go live from the appropriate town locations, and that the current license has locations listed, and that you've tasked the committee to, in its negotiations with Comcast, to ensure that the final deal balances the need for continuing certain locations, together with the interest expressed by Doug as your chair of your committee, that there be a connection between Sherborn and the studio at the Dover High School, so the programming can go directly there over a clear path to have good sound and good picture. And that, as part of the negotiation process, would be done. But you're interested in making sure that sites that exist in Sherborn that you want to go live from, not tape things live from, have a means to go live, whether that's done through what's provided by Comcast, or that's something that's done by the town separately, through its own abilities as a result of the cable license.
Well, but more specifically, to the extent that there is infrastructure and we're taking it out of the new license as a requirement, I want to be sure that there is a clear understanding about what happens to the existing infrastructure. So I was under the impression that there's a connection to the library with this INET and over to the community center that's already existing. And if we take that out of the license as a requirement, what happens to it? So I assume it becomes owned by Sherborn.
Well, typically what happens in that case, and Ms. Foss, when he speaks, is free to comment, typically that infrastructure is not turned over to the town, because usually it's lashed together with the inside of the rest of their cable system, or if it's separately done, it may still be bundled. So I would not expect that the copper, which is quite old and doesn't work as well, the copper cables would be something that the town would be able to get from Comcast or necessarily want to use. But the point's taken that with respect to locations like the library, like the community center, that the town has, through the board, has expressed a need and an interest in continuing to have the ability to program live from those locations. And in the final negotiations, as I envision it, that your committee will attempt to either have that continued by Comcast, or based on the totality of the license, have a means or funding available by which that those connections can be done by the town as a part of the cable license funding and process. And those technical issues, I think we can leave to the committee. You're just indicating there's an interest and need to continue from the library, from the community center, police and fire.
Pine Hill.
Just a clarification, we never had the ability to broadcast from the library, but that does, all the public buildings that are on the list and the license get a residential cable drop, so they can watch cable TV.
Now,
That's different.
That's right. Now, this one, these are the INET locations, whether they were built or not. Currently, the community center exists.
Yep, and Pine Hill.
And Pine Hill. All right. So the community center and Pine Hill are two existing locations, and the board feels that it's correct that those are locations that you would want to have continued ability to do live video broadcasting from. And as a result, in the negotiations to finalize the license, we will make that need and interest clear to Comcast. There are usually more than one way to resolve, to address that, and what we're usually successful with, and I've worked together with Mr. Foss in many licenses where this is done together and done well, is we try to figure out a way that best meets both interests of both parties, that gets what the town needs, and in a good technological way, at the same time potentially lessening some of the burden on Comcast by doing it in a way that gets them out of the loop, but gets you the connection you need. So that's what we'll work on going forward, and that would be the community center, the library,
And Pine Hill.
and Pine. I was going to say and Pine Hill.
These are places where we can have community meetings. There are large community meeting rooms, both at the community center and at Pine Hill. And sometimes we have town meetings there.
Yeah,
There's
I was
caucuses.
definitely including Pine Hill, but yes, and library, I just wasn't sure. So those would be the three. The police station, fire station, typically unless they're really a meeting room, it's not somewhere you can go live with programming. That's different from emergency centers. And so with that, the good news is that's less than in the license now. And we work together with the committee to try to meet that need for the town in a way that works for Comcast.
And the other driver is the PEG to the
Yeah.
regional school center, or wherever it's, right?
Yeah, the truth is, the way we've used it over the past years, it's been 10 years now, we don't broadcast live from those other buildings.
Right.
We seldom have big meetings. There's been, I think, twice we've had a town meeting at Pine Hill, and we videotape it and put it back, broadcast it later, and play back. And typically, you want to get people there for a quorum. Anyway, we value
But the other issue that I raised is the one that's, the library requested the continuation of the internet service.
And that's a
And I
separate
wonder
topic.
if you could
Yep.
read that into the record as
Yep, thank you for
part
forwarding
of this hearing.
So this is from the town librarian, Elizabeth Johnston, and she writes, "I noticed on the town's website that Sherborn will be holding a Comcast license renewal hearing. This may be a routine hearing. However, if there is a discussion about the value of renewing the Comcast license, I would like to express to you my support on behalf of the library for the Comcast license to continue to serve the town. Comcast and its previous parent entities have long provided the library and citizens who use the library free broadband internet access service and free email accounts for the library staff. The service has been very reliable, and I would like to continue to take advantage of the services that Comcast has provided to the library. Thank you very much, Elizabeth."
So to put that in a legal perspective, as you know, based on the FCC decision and the Supreme Court case, that internet is not deemed to be a cable service. Of course, when it began, cable companies said it was a cable service. then they argued different. So it may be that Mr. Foss here today, because cable companies like to make sure that the hearing, which is about cable, doesn't get into other areas, he may take the position, which is his right and perfectly respectable, to say that's something that the company does voluntarily, that they can articulate, outside of the hearing process, that whether it's their intention to continue that, whether they would be prepared to put that in writing and to say that their voluntary program and they'd like to continue it. But I think to be fair to Mr. Foss, that unless he wants to address that, we should separate it out from the process. And you've done it right. Here's someone who's raised it. You've heard that interest. We're saying it's a non-cable interest. Let's put it aside. Mr. Foss wants to respond. That's great. The good news is I can tell you that in my dealings with Comcast, rightly so, they pride themselves. They're in a lot of the news recently on a lot of big transactions, and they take great pride in what they feel is rightly so, they're meeting their civic obligations, whether it's internet service for folks who can't afford it, or providing it to schools and library, and they always articulate outside of the hearing process that they're proud of that and they intend to continue that, and I think they have a record that shows that they're true to their word. But for purpose of the hearing, I think we'll keep it separate.
And another question, Bill, if I could, are there provisions in this contract to address upgrading service as new technology is developed? I mean, 10 years is a long time. Sherborn sometimes is treated like a backwater by companies that rely on density for their, economics, and so some assurance that the town will, within a reasonable time, get the benefit of whatever kind of upgrades other places are getting.
Good. Well, good question. Now, in the license, there are performance reviews that the language is a little more narrow than the old language that would talk about the company coming in and talking about new technology and saying, where that may be in a particular town. So that there's very limited language with respect to that discussion process. I can say that based on how Comcast approaches the municipal relationship, because they're a cable company and because they're a good cable company, that they have built up, through the nature of how cable built up from town to town, relationships with towns and discussions of knowing who the board is, coming in and finding out what the important issues are, willingness to come in and talk about those things, whereas there are other telecommunication companies and certainly other utilities where, the next time you see them will be the first. So that I think that based on that history, what's interesting is despite the fact they've become quite large, they still have managed to keep that mentality that they're part of a smaller process with a relationship. So I think the language in the license, while limiting, is sufficient given what's been long customary practice. Now, with respect to technology, the Telecommunication Act says we can't dictate technologies. And so, on the other hand, there may be services that would be something that we could address. The problem there is that, in fact, with fast-moving telecommunications, even within cable, you're really not in a position where we could pinpoint what that would be now in most cases, nor is there really a way in a license to achieve something that says, well, if you do this in the license itself, if you do this elsewhere, you have to do it here. It's not something that's been a successful approach for municipalities. But I will say, and again, not to negotiate here, there are some issues that are important to all PEG access, nonprofit, public education, government access programs, and government access programs, and they're important to Sherborn access and Dover Sherborn access. And those relate to questions of high definition cable casting, and to a lesser extent PEG access, video on demand, and placement on the electronic program guide of the company. I do know that Comcast is thinking about and working on what that future will be in terms of those issues. I also know that there are licenses that have been done that I've even been involved with recently, where Comcast has voluntarily offered some just correspondence that addresses the fact that they know you care about it, and they'll talk to you about it going forward as relevant. That's something I'd like to see here, but we haven't yet broached that with Comcast. And I think that would be the most important thing we could do to record the fact that these are issues that are of interest to the town. And this came up, as the chair mentioned last time, the need for HD for PEG access, as you talked about last time, and we discussed at one point, if everything's in high definition and clear, then, and if access is not, it's going to be harder for people to look at it in the sense that it's something they could watch. And Comcast and Mr. Foss have recognized in discussions that they understand going forward that'll be done. Something has to be done, and maybe we could reach some sort of accommodation that reflects what some other towns have been able to do. Not many, but a few, and we'll discuss that, outside of the hearing process with Mr. Foss.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good answer, but I think boiling it down in terms of the consumer side, not the PEG, but the consumer side, what you're saying is we trust them because they've been a good company and because we have a personal relationship with Mr. Foss, which is a positive relationship, and all that's good, and I want to trust them and respect that personal relationship also, but we all know that companies do business deals, and
Right.
they may not be the same company 10 years from now, but they'll still have a license. And so I would like to see if there's a way you can build some accountability and to
Right.
make sure Sherborn isn't left behind if there are those kind of
Yeah, and
developments.
that's good, because people care about also what their product is at home.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's right. So very, very briefly on that there's not a technical way we can do that with a license. And really what that comes down to is who your cable company is. That there are cable companies serving certain towns, and this isn't true they have the same name now, but they're different. But in the last 10 years, there have been companies that can serve towns and cities that were really behind the curve technologically and programmatically, whether it was video on demand, whether it was high definition, whether it was a wide array of cable issues, much less internet. Comcast, to its credit, is a cutting-edge company in terms of programming, operations, technology. And so that there's nothing in the license that I could tell you that we could successfully put in, apart from talk to us, that could legally under law require that they do something they don't want to do. But the good news is that if anyone were to take them over, unless they were to trade you to a company that wasn't as qualified, and here's the other news for Massachusetts, for better or for worse, depending on perspectives, but the good news is that Comcast now is, from their perspective, expanding in Massachusetts. They're now going to, if the Time Warner purchase goes through, they made a deal with Charter Communications to trade all of Charter's New England franchises in exchange for Comcast franchises in the Midwest. So that I think we know that Comcast is not looking to spin off communities in Massachusetts. Rather, in the cable world, having that sort of cluster is financially very valuable. So I think that the only realistic possibility would be if Comcast were to be taken over by another company or sell itself. And my sense would be that would be a company that would be technologically able to meet those needs. Now, whether or not in all other areas size is helpful to the operation of a cable company is outside of the nature of this hearing and outside of what I would talk about. But on those issues, programming, technology, you have a first-rate company, and even if they get bigger, they'll probably be better at that. Whether or not that there's some downside to that is another issue.
I mean, you understand the point, and
Yes.
I
We will.
I have maybe less confidence or certainty than you do, but
Right. What I will do with
appreciate
the
your
license expressing the need is try to see if on the provision that talks about performance evaluation, it's broadened in a way more consistent with the way licenses used to be, that it says, you know what, when there's things on the horizon or that are here, we'd like you to come in and talk to us about that. At your point, I'll in my draft change that so they know that. And you know what? That's good to know, because later on, when they wonder if they should come in or not, we'll have a record, this hearing, and we'll have the license that says, no, that was the intent, that we were always happy to come in and talk to you about what we're thinking about and what we might be providing going forward.
Great, good questions, Mike. Okay, so do we open it to the public now? Do you have any more to add, or we'll take public
I
comment?
suggest if Mr. Foss would like to speak now
Mr.
about something,
Foss?
that'd be fine, or if he wants to. He might not have it, sometimes.
I see a hand or two in the audience here. Maybe Mr. Foss wants to hear what the folks have to say first, or you're welcome to speak, sir.
Just, if I may, just briefly, I really don't want to talk about anything that might be substantive, but I do want to be certain that a few things occur. By way of introduction, my name is Frank Foss, Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Comcast. Nice to be back here again. Back to the Cablevision Systems transfer and Media One transfers back in the 90s. So it's been a while since.
Paul tells me you haven't aged a day since 10 years ago.
We won't go there. But I do want to mention a few things, and it's really spurred by the early comments about the preliminary denial. And I just want to make certain that the date of the letter that was read by Mr. Solomon be mentioned into the record, the date of the library letter, just so that we can identify if you read into the notice was read, which I thank you very much for that. But I also want to make certain that a letter from Comcast, and I'll provide this all to the stenographer too, dated January 27th, 2011, which is pertaining to the renewal of the license. The actual license that we will be renewing is part of the record, and also that the proposal that we filed with you folks on January 14th of 2014 also be placed into the record, so that there's no objection, that we know what we're actually preliminarily
Sounds great.
denying, and it's clear. My thought is with that. Some of the conversation, and this might be good to hear before the public, some of the conversation with regards to technology and some of the services that we provide, whether they be cable services, information services, or telephone services, are driven by a number of things. One thing that many services are driven by, especially the rates and the requirements for technology, is through regulatory means. But also, what drives it is marketing, consumerism, things that people desire. That is to say, the drive of the consumer, without regulation, is going to make technology come to the fore. In addition, as we have here in Sherborn and many towns in eastern Massachusetts, we have a competing cable system. We also have DirecTV. All those things, away from a regulation or a license, requirements in a license, drive technology and drive services. So as a package, we hope that they are looked at as a whole, rather than just a single license driving technology or driving services or driving consumer issues. In that the consumers are going to make the decision, and quite frankly, our competitors are going to drive us to do much better, as we believe we do. And with that, that's all I really wanted to add. I'm very interested to hear the topics about the internet and some of the INET issues and some of the video return. I will comment that anything to do with the internet or telephone is not part of this licensing process. But if someone mentions it, it's interesting to hear, and it does help us understand what people think. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foss. That's great. Did I see a hand up in the audience?
I was Bill Miller, 102 Bullitt Street. I'm a member of the committee, and he basically addressed what I was going to talk about. And when we first entered into the agreement 10 years ago, there was one company in town. Now we have Verizon, and we also have DirecTV. So if they're not meeting the obligations, technically, people are free to switch back and forth. So
Thank you, Bill.
he addressed it much better than I did.
You did great, though, as well. You held your own. Yes, Elliot.
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main. You were here about a month ago, and what I said then, I'll say again tonight for the record. when I go to channel 22, the volume is way down. I have to crank the volume way up on my control box, my remote. And sometimes, even with that cranked all the way up, I can't hear what's going on. So it's back to whatever other channel. So, and then when I go back to that other channel, I'm blown out of the room because the volume's sky high. So somewhere between this microphone and my set, there are some volume controls that Comcast should adjust so that the signal that comes from here to my set pretty much matches what's coming in on the other 1,000 channels that I get or whatever. So see what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Any other comments? Yes, Carol?
It's a little scary that I'm agreeing with Elliot, but it happens at my house too. The volume is very, very low on that channel.
Well, we did talk
And I have
when we
brand new
last met
television.
about audio quality. And,
Yeah, we did talk about it, and I spot checked it myself. We try to level match here when we're monitoring the subscriber feed. We go back and forth to adjacent stations. We could do better. We could add a limiter compressor to make it all even instead of the dynamics of the
The trouble is not in my set.
Right.
Connection to the studio.
But is this a Comcast issue or a Verizon issue?
I
or
got Verizon, it's the same thing.
right.
There's entire selectmen's meetings you can't hear.
So it's not really a Comcast issue, it's
I don't think it has anything to do with this.
It could be,
You can turn the radio broadcast up, though, can't you?
Just come out more often. Yeah, okay. Any other things you need from us? If there's any more public
There
comment?
was more comment, I thought.
I was just going to mention that Verizon has the same issue.
Right. Right. So, Bill, then
The
I
only other
think...
thing is, again, because it was such a large issue last time, and is the issue of the service to residents. I don't know if you want to beat to death, but you might want to just repeat again that interest that took a large part of the conversation at the last meeting. Your board's feeling that, as you expressed it, that there was a need, and you understand from the town's perspective, to make cable service available to all residents as an current license, and that was a large part of if you could just confirm, is that still your position? I mean, you
I
raised
think
that.
we changed that. I think
No, 10 years ago it was significant because there were at least one section of town that was not cableized, and cable has been brought there. But to the extent that someone wants access to Comcast, we think they should provide it, even if it's in an awkward corner of the town, or that they have a difficult access point to get to that. Everybody in town should be able to watch selectmen's meetings and watch their government and their education and their government with P for
Public, yeah.
public.
Yep.
They should have access to those programs townwide. So it was important 10 years ago. It remains important today.
Right, so we were averse to density requirements or minimum density requirements, I think is what we expressed the last time. We also expressed concerns about the image quality as well as the sound quality, some of which is our equipment, and also what we expect will be improved by virtue of the fact that we'll have a direct connection to our local cable programming studio. And then, of course, what we talked about earlier this evening, having the live access capability in these multiple locations will be something to look forward to and strive for. Right.
Thank you, I just wanted,
Yeah.
those were yours, not mine, or
Yes.
you brought them up independently, but I wanted to make sure that they
We
were
stated
on the
them this
record.
evening in this
Thank you very
public
much.
hearing. Okay.
Should we read those dates into the record that, as Mr. Foss had asked, maybe?
Well, if it's okay with we can certainly read them in the record. I have those here. I think he did, but I will provide to the stenographer Mr. Foss has. There's first there was the initial letter starting what's called the 626 process, and the date on that Mr. Foss stated, and I have it here also.
I meant the two dates that you hadn't read on your letter and your memo and the other letter that was read from the library. I think he specifically mentioned those two
Yes.
as not having the dates in the record.
That date was yesterday, May
14th.
14th.
That's on your memo.
On my memo, yes.
And then the library letter was dated,
It was
12th, maybe?
Friday, May 9th, 2014. That was a letter from our town library.
Good, so our next move, unless, Mr. Foss, do you have anything further for us? And no other public comment? Then we be taking this motion that you've recommended here.
I would recommend taking that motion.
Before we do that, do you want us to close the hearing or keep it open?
And I'm fine closing the hearing, with taking this vote.
After the hearing is closed.
Close the hearing and take the vote either way, but the closed hearing tonight is appropriate.
Okay, so I move. Second.
Okay, any discussion, all in favor? Great.
And then I'd move that the board vote the following preliminary assessment that the cable television license of Comcast of Massachusetts 1, Inc. should not be renewed pursuant to Section 326C of the Cable Act.
626C, sorry, Paul.
Didn't I say that?
Yes. I heard 326.
Okay, 326C of the Cable Act in order to protect the interests of all relevant parties and provide the best opportunity for the town and Comcast to reach an agreement regarding a new cable license renewal, a new cable television renewal license.
I would second that motion. Is there any further discussion?
no, just to make clear for anybody who's coming late to this, that this is a procedural denial to allow the committee to work out an agreement that is acceptable to both parties.
That's
It's a
right.
friendly denial.
Friendly denial, and both parties.
Would you suggest this be read, the actual preliminary assessment document? We don't need to do that.
I think if it's in the record, that's fine,
That's fine.
unless Mr. Foss has a different desire.
No.
So I
Okay.
would ask to put in the record the preliminary assessment draft decision that Mr. Solomon had forwarded to the board,
Great, dated May 14th,
May 14,
2014.
2014.
Right, that's attached to his letter, that's an exhibit, the letter of May 14, 2014.
And that's what your motion is referring to anyway.
Yes.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, again, the only line there that I think is most relevant for the public is the second whereas Comcast has engaged in a diligent and cooperative good faith license negotiation process. They're critical, and we appreciate that, and that's why we're hoping to finish that up and together with Comcast, given they're moving this ahead.
Terrific. All right, so it's been moved and seconded, and discussed, all in favor? Great. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thanks.
Foss, and Bill and Doug and your committee.
Yep, we're
Terrific
going to go work on the license document further right now. So thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Okay.
making it clear, Bill, too. I mean, this is good.
I appreciate it.
Great. All right. So now I'm coming back. We had a couple of public comments remaining. I think, Sean, you were up, or if you had anything further?
I just want to bring up, there was a series of emails surrounding an issue that happened while most people were on vacation. And I apologize if I was disturbing anyone's vacation, but there was a serious issue with some drainage
Thank you, Bill.
problems
Thanks, Bill.
and an open trench. And I think it warrants that we follow up in a future meeting. I know at least one of the selectmen had mentioned that we should follow up with the details of that, what happened and what's going to happen. It's not done with.
So your suggestion is an agenda item, just to go over the issue of the what happened
Well,
over the
there's a
repairs
vast
that were
amount of
made.
issues that happen, and I would suggest that at least the building inspector be involved, possibly legal counsel, but definitely the building inspector should be
Well,
consulted.
there were
Should have been
process-
consulted.
There were process issues, I think, that Sean had pointed out during the which we should try to address and see if there's a protocol. Maybe if something like this happened again, it would be an easier protocol to follow and, you
Well,
know.
there's definitely protocols that weren't followed, and that should be
We'll have
addressed.
you for that discussion.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Appreciate that. Any other?
That's all I have
Go
for
ahead.
the moment.
I saw Peter, you had your hand raised, you're all set at this point? So that would cover us for public comment. Now, you snuck in after the public comment period, but it hasn't been closed, so we'll allow you to
That's
speak.
exactly right. It wasn't closed yet. I just want to say, I know I've mentioned this for the last couple of years. Well, first off, I'd like to thank the person that installed the 2 signs out front. They're wonderful. But my public comment is, as I've said the last couple of years, garlic mustard, a highly invasive plant. And there's not a road that I drive down in this town where it's everywhere. And I would urge for the people that are not aware of what it is, do a Google search, because it's all going into bloom right now. And you will be dealing with this, and again, it throws out a tap root that produces chemicals that will eventually kill everything else around it, so that only the garlic mustard survives. And DEP and the state says throw it in the regular trash. Bag it and throw it in the regular trash. It's the only vegetation right now that the Sherborn dump will allow in the trash. But it's in all of your properties, it's in yours, it's in mine, it's in his front yard, it's everywhere.
All right, thanks.
What does it look like?
It starts out in the baby stage, it starts out looking like maybe a very small violet. Right now, it's about a foot tall, and those are the babies from last year. It's about a foot tall, and it's got 4 little white petals on the top of it. And you can see it as you drive down Hunting Lane, Russet Hill, Elliott Street, pick one. And it's all along the roadsides. You can see it right down here, all in front of the Clerk house.
Okay, white petals, foot high.
4 petals.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Pretty flowers to me, but okay.
Well, everybody says I got
Bad
a
weeds.
beautiful, oh,
Yep.
look, wildflowers.
Okay, very good. Any more public comment? All right. That moves us to the next part of the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. Every year, we change the organizational structure. Past practice or general practice has been that the person who's in the last year of their term serves the 3rd year as chair. Last year, that would have been Paul, but he was too busy, so I stood in for him. I didn't know, Paul, whether you had any interest in standing in at this point as a chair? And other
I think
thoughts you
under
have?
the rotation, this is your turn this year. I have a number of responsibilities on the state level that are quite demanding.
Yes.
So I don't feel that it would be the best contribution I could make to the
Understood.
board to try and take on that duty. So I'd like to take myself out of
the possibilities.
consideration. And both of you are very capable people to be chairman. Mike has been chairman of
Every
a lot of
committee in
boards and-
town, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. So he's almost a professional chairman, but this is your turn, and...
Well, I mean, I've done it for a year. First of all, I'm glad to see you sitting there again, Paul, and again, congrats to you for the election. So I've done it for a year. Usually you try to do it for a year. I don't, it's always good to have a fresh face. One of the concerns I have is Mike, would love to see Mike as a chair, and whether it's now or it's next year might become problematic if, in fact, the acceleration of the 3 versus 5 selectmen comes into play. That might be more difficult as a shoo-in, if you will. So I just look for what's in the best interest of the community. That's all. That's the only reason I'm here. So I'd be happy to nominate Mike as chair, and if he's willing to do it and wants to step up and
Yeah,
help.
I'd be honored to do it, Peter. I think you've done a great job, and, if maybe it'll alleviate some of the stress of the position to have somebody else stand in, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, so I've nominated Mike to be chair, and I appreciate the nice, kind words, and I appreciate having the opportunity to serve up here. I'll keep serving. I just get to throw stones from the sidelines a little bit more. That would be fun.
David wants to nominate someone.
David?
No, I just wanted to point out that the Selectmen passed policy in 2012, that there's no second needed, that it's just the nomination and you vote on a nomination.
Okay, well, are you okay?
Well, I see this basically between the two of you to sort out. So if you
So
don't want to do it and you're nominating
I'm happy to
Michael,
have,
that's-
yeah, I think that would be
an
great. It's not that I don't want to do
privilege
it. I think, I'd like to see be sure that Mike serves as a chair. I'd like to be on the board when you serve as a chair. Who knows what the future brings? So that's why I nominated you. So, given that, I'll take a vote. All in favor of Mike being chair? Great. All right, congrats. Now you get to do the rest.
Oh, I have to sit in the middle now?
Yeah, yeah. And you see that pile of stuff? Yeah. Good luck, Davey. Congrats.
Congratulations.
There you go.
I was
That's more for us to know who we are,
incognito.
you know?
All right. So, next up is the stormwater GIS update.
Yeah, I think we have to elect a vice chair.
Oh, we have to
and
do a
clerk.
vice chair and a clerk? See, I'm already screwing up and I'm just starting out.
But you're doing a great job.
Do we have a nomination for a vice chair?
Still the honeymoon period.
Thank you.
That's right.
Well, I'd like to continue to serve as vice chair if that's possible.
I nominate Paul as vice chair.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. I'll nominate Peter as clerk.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. I guess we're duly reorganized. And I see our town planner here. And Ed's here. Is Bridget coming to this too, or?
Yeah, could I say a few?
Okay. Oh, is there a hearing going on next door?
Yeah, John
Okay.
Higley went over to check with her.
Okay, great.
Could I say a few words?
Yeah.
Basically, this is an update for stormwater and GIS, because I noticed that, over the last year, I've heard things about it, but I never really saw things consolidated into one document, and people kind of weren't on the same page that I saw. So Bridget Graziano put together this document in consultation with Gino, and it basically contains all the information that we would need to know about this permitting and what's upcoming. Bridget was going to present this, but she is at her meeting that started at 7
Thanks, here she comes.
Yes, she is. Great.
And now she is not. So this is great. So I
just
think,
gonna toggle between
I think Bridget and Gino were going to be the lead on this, and
Good.
then Ed had information on the GIS portion.
That's great, yeah, and it would probably be helpful to everybody to have a little bit of the background and then what you're proposing.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so a little bit of the background on what's been happening with stormwater is that the town is currently functioning under a 2003 NIPDES permit. What is NIPDES? NIPDES is National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, and that is the permit that's authorized under the Clean Water Act, which is issued by the EPA. In 2012, the Town of Sherborn and Board of Selectmen sought funding for compliance with this 2003 permit in anticipation of the 2012 permit that was going to be dropping for MS4. What's an MS4? Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer Systems, which is what our town functions under as a small municipality. So in 2012, the Selectmen hired AECom to do a review of what was needed for compliance with the 2003 NIPDES permit, and then what would be up and coming for the first year of the supposedly 2012 permit, which actually never came to fruition at this point. They did a run in January 2012. The Selectmen reviewed that, and that became part of a warrant article, part of their warrant article that was put forth at the 2012 town meeting. The Planning Board Conservation and Community Maintenance and Development reviewed AECom's proposal and determined that there were certain portions of their proposal under the 2003 compliance and the proposed 2012 permit that we could take on ourselves in order to assist in lowering the overall cost for the compliance for 2003 and then the first year. The numbers originally began at $35,000 for compliance with the 2003 permit, and the 2012 permit was $142,000, totaling $160,000. We eventually got it down to $33,000 for the first year. And this is an agreement with AECom, and they then presented in February 2012 to the Selectmen, lowering the cost for the 2003 compliance to $33,000 and the first year to $109,000. This agreement was reached because the town was seeking funding to hold our stormwater information that was to be taken by AECom and CM&D through a GPS unit, which is a requirement of the 2003 permit, and will have even more requirements under the 2012 for mapping of catch basins, outfalls, and drainage areas. We were to obtain a GPS unit and then store that in a GIS system. Currently, the only two departments that have a GIS system are Conservation and Planning Board. The assessor was also going to be required under her requirements, and she can talk to you about that, but to have a GIS system to store her data, and Ed was going to be required to have one as well to store the stormwater data for the catch basins, outfalls, discharge points. So by lowering the cost, by agreeing to take on some of the work, we freed up about $18,000 to purchase People GIS. Ed, Yvonne, Gino, myself, and some of the selectmen were involved in interviewing and presentations of different GIS providers. Ultimately, during Jim Purcell's tenure, we decided to go with People GIS. That contract was eventually signed. But let me back up. At the town meeting, the $160,000 was passed at town meeting and then went to ballot, and that passed. So we have the whole $160,000. Recently, we've okayed the GIS, and we've gotten People GIS moving. That was the $18,000. And now we are looking to begin finalizing compliance with the 2003 permit. Well, why do we have to finalize compliance with the 2003 permit for a permit that hasn't dropped yet? We anticipated it in 2012. Well, the reason why we have to is because once the permit drops, which we do not have a current date of when that will happen, we will have to certify compliance with the 2003. So we have to wrap up all those items that we're not currently in compliance with, and that's what that $33,000 was for. So we have, along with David Williams, we've got it moving that we will start wrapping up the work under the $33,000 with AECom, which that is the contract I'm speaking of that was signed with Jim Purcell. Some of the items that Ed just passed out is some stormwater mapping that I did myself to help out AECom and to assist them with locating catch basins and outfalls to relieve a little bit of the cost. And they took my data and they generated it into these maps. So we've already started mapping the urbanized area, which is a requirement of the 2003 permit. So I will tell you the items that we have to do. We have to map all of the areas within the urbanized location that I provided to the selectmen in their packet. We have to locate catch basins and outfalls. So that'll have to be done. We have to...
This is all in the 2003?
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to do dry testing of the catch basins and outfalls and provide that data. And then we have to make sure that our stormwater bylaw, our illicit discharge and post-construction policies and bylaws are in compliance with the 2003 permit. Well, yeah, we've been doing that. So annually, under this 2003 permit, the town is required to provide, at the end of April, they are required to provide an annual report of how they've worked on compliance that year and what their goals are for the following year. Ed drafts that permit annually, and myself and Gino review and add items to that annual report, and that's submitted by May 1st of every year. obviously, we're in our 11th, let's see, 2003, 11th year. So we've been working under the 2003 permit for 11 years. In theory, the EPA thought we'd only be working under it for 5 years. They're supposed to drop a new permit every 5 years. So we're working on complying with the 2003 permit. We are getting the People GIS underway, and that is where we're at right now, but we do not know when this new permit will drop. And at that point, we do have the $109,000 to get started working with AECom on the first year. However, after the first year, we'll have years 2, 3, 4, and 5 to secure funding for, which we don't have right now.
We don't want to quite secure funding for that either, because we don't know exactly what's going to be required of us yet. So,
Bridget, are other towns doing this also?
Yes, they are.
And are they doing roughly the same thing we're doing?
Yeah, actually, they're securing funding on a much higher scale, depending on the size of the town.
But even in terms of the process you just outlined of updating compliance with the 2003 permits and just the strategy of waiting to see what comes next before you commit to any funding, is that how it's being handled?
pretty
Yeah.
much.
I mean, it's
The
a-
one thing that's saving Sherborn from a number of different requirements and funding is the fact that we don't have water and sewer. So other towns like Franklin, Worcester, they're really struggling, and also being within the Charles River watershed. So their phosphorus documentation, they're going through a lot more extensive studies and funding.
I just add, as part of my monthly briefings from the White House, my sense was the target for issuance of this permit would be after November,
This year,
sometime.
Paul? The 2014?
Yeah, after the elections.
Okay.
It would be looking at January or February. So I don't see, at least what I'm being told is not to expect anything immediate on a new permit.
Okay, well, we've already gotten started on compliance, so if it dropped in November, we'd be perfect.
So we do have to be in compliance with the old permit.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, we'd be good.
And that's all we're pursuing at this time anyway.
Right.
And it's probably true whether they put a new permit in or not, right? We should be in compliance with our permits when we can.
So you'd be ready by November with all
Sure.
that needs to be done?
Yes.
Yeah. And the 160, I remember back at 2 years ago when this came up, the 160, there were some big numbers thrown out, but then we went back to the 160 saying, well, because we don't know about those future years, let's just do
Yeah,
a
there
limited
was a couple
amount.
factors involved. Number one was we had taken a hard look at what we could actually do internally and not have engineering do to reduce the costs. And also, in the beginning, it was disclosed that we had to map and take care of the entire town as part of this permit. And what it's been reduced to is the urbanized area downtown. So that significantly reduced our costs.
So just refresh my memory, we had an article the year before, something that failed, when we said we have to do this, but it failed
2011.
by the
Right.
voters.
2011.
The bigger number,
It passed, it was $400,000, and then it failed in ballot.
failed in ballot.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lack of outreach and understanding about the absolute need for the money.
So the 160 that the voters did approve, has the configuration of that 160 changed in what we're doing here?
The
I mean, I
configure-
remember there was the piece for the 2003 permit that you're
Right.
working on, and you're at 30.
So the configuration only changed in the sense is when they presented to the selectmen, the 2003 permit was 35,000.
And it's
and the-
32 over 3.
Right now, we've reduced it because we've taken on some of the work ourselves. We've reduced it to 33. And then there was 42,000 was for the first year that the permit dropped.
Okay.
And we've reduced that to 109,000 by taking on some of the work ourselves.
I'm not following your math there.
42,000.
140, yeah, okay, good.
Sorry, did I
That's what I
say,
thought.
sorry.
It's okay.
Thought I said 142.
Makes more sense that way.
So we dropped it just enough to allow for, to do the GIS, which was crucial to Ed providing that data
Okay.
for stormwater.
What is the significance of the urbanized area, and what's the significance of the fact that it doesn't include a number of the subdivisions that we know have drainage structures? Are we still responsible for those drainage structures that are outside the urbanized area?
You're still responsible, you're just not responsible for reporting specific data on them, dry conditions, wet conditions, and testing them and reporting those to the EPA. What they do is they define an urbanized area where it's more concentrated with impervious surface and the housing is denser and there's a higher traffic area. So those areas are targeted specifically because of the high-density area.
We will be doing a full mapping of the town in anticipation in coming years that they are going to expand that urbanized area for the permit.
Just to take a step back for a minute and explain this, the purpose of this permit, the United States determined that the waters of the United States were being contaminated by runoff from paved areas, that things like streets would accumulate all kinds of waste products, and too many of these drainage structures went right into wetlands. So the purpose of this permit is first to phase in a set of controls that would try to break the direct connection between the streets and paved areas and the wetlands. So the first part of this was to find out where they are. So they targeted the urban areas. And by urban areas for Sherborn, that was basically the business district, because that's the designers of this in Washington figured, let's start with urbanized areas, because that's where the pavements are, that's where the automobiles are, that's where a lot of the pollutants are coming from. So the requirements are phrased in terms of these urban areas as this phase. Subsequent phases might get into other parts of the discharge system. But first we have to map them. Then the subsequent phase is going to be to disconnect it by like putting grease traps in or storm centers in, or rerouting them to different outfalls that don't go right into wetlands. Things like those things we have at Farm Pond.
The swales, the vegetated swales,
right,
and things like that.
Things like that. So it doesn't go directly into the water resources.
What about places where the water just runs off the side of the road? Are they, is the direction this is headed, Ed, that you're going to have to install drainage structures on places like Goulding Street where it's just a runoff into the wetlands on part of that now, places like that?
I anticipate there being newer regulations where you have to, but also too, just as part of our normal growth. I'm recognizing more and more that these streets need drainage, Lake Street being one of them. The runoff, the normal runoff is just being blocked in so many different areas that it has to be addressed. And the
Is
only way
that
is to do that is-
contributing to the breakdown on the road pavements and things like that, the edges of the road? I know you've commented
That's
on.
exactly.
We do have a $3 million earmark in the transportation bond bill for drainage improvements on some of those streets like Forest Street, maybe Lake Street.
I'm hoping for that because our current funding, there's no way we're going to be able to do it.
Right. So what's the action item for us? Is there anything you need from us now? And I'm not trying to cut you off if there's more to the presentation, but...
Right off the bat, I would like the board to review a draft that I prepared for illicit discharges. I'd like the board to adopt this. CM&D could adopt it as a policy, but we believe that it would have more teeth being from the selectmen. And then in the interim, that CM&D can't change this regulation, as this is something the town needs, and it's in the future, as part of the permit, this is going to be required that it be adopted by the board.
As a regulation.
Tell us where that is. Is it in our package yet, or is it something you're going to give us?
It's not.
Okay.
I'm going to forward it to David, and I'll get it over to you.
Okay, so that's
that'll be a
that's a
future-
future meeting?
But in the packet is the annual report we have to file.
Yes.
Right.
That's due May 1st, 2014. I assume you filed it
Yes.
on time?
Yes.
And you're not looking for us to approve this in any way? This is just for our information?
This was just in general an update on where we are, just so the selectmen are aware of where this money is going right now and how we're progressing.
And we're well on track is the cliff notes here.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think we're on track because they picked up the ball
Yeah,
and ran with it,
yeah,
which is great.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it saved the town, looks like you're going to save the town some money in the process.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Hopefully.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's great.
Mr. Chairman, there's a hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. John?
Might seem like a silly question. Pine Hill School involved in the business district?
No, it's not.
Pine Hill Lane?
No,
It's interesting.
no, it's not. We looked at that today.
But we will be mapping all the areas though, right?
We'll be mapping all the areas. Part of the $109,000 for the first year was to purchase a GPS unit, which we purchased by AECom, and then it'll be used by them and Ed, members of CM&D, to begin mapping the catch basins and outfalls, and that'll actually begin very shortly. AECom is going to review what's needed, and Ed is going to provide specs of what he'll need for a GPS unit, and they will coordinate to make that purchase, and that unit will be handed over to the town at the end, and that's the same unit that his crew will use for all of the years when mapping.
Okay.
Just one last question from me. Bridget, just looking closer, you had sent a memo in February to the two good-looking folks over there from
Right.
the office downstairs. And so you had outlined, based on the draft that was online of this 2012 permit that is still up in the air, hasn't dropped or whatever, the expected cost that one would anticipate in the first year, you had 120, 130 grand. That's the equivalent of the 109 we're talking about, right?
Correct.
And then, what we didn't provide for in that town meeting of two years ago, the subsequent years, but now I'm seeing some amounts here, which is good to see these amounts, because they're
Right.
actually less than I would have anticipated.
I-
So
they are a lot
You
less.
think those are pretty good, even today, based on what you know?
I think
those
they're
amounts are
reasonable, because what's going to happen is CM&D is going to do most of the work, so it'll take man-hours for CM&D to complete this. The big chunk is going to be the testing of the sediment, and that's during dry and wet conditions, and that's going to be what's going to cost the town the most money. That's going to be a bulk of it, and the $109,000 is where we're in the first year is where we're getting everything in line. They'll already know, that's when they do the initial mapping. They'll know where the catch basins are, the outfalls,
Yep.
the drainage area. So they won't have to be wandering around looking for them like they are the first year, which costs extra money. They'll already know right where they're going. That data will already be uploaded to their GPS unit, so they'll go right to those sites and take the samples. So things will happen faster each
Right.
year.
So this yet-to-drop permit, just in terms of envisioning the amounts, it's not $1 million nut that we're likely to be facing. It's more like under 200 grand over years 4 through 5.
As far as we know, there's a North Coastal draft permit on EPA's website, and that's what we're going off of.
I understand. that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing that it does not include is we're going to be required to inspect and certify these structures. So any problems that we do encounter, blocked lines, collapsed outfalls, things of that nature, that we're going to be looking for separate funding to repair.
All right,
And
let me
we
ask
don't
this.
know what the extent of that is
Maybe a
yet.
question I shouldn't ask. There's I don't know what you call it, on Woodland Street that's, giving way a little bit. You got the cones up and bump and sign and so forth. That's not subject to the 2003 thing. That's not subject to this urbanized area. But it would ultimately be subject to the 2012 permit, or no? It's not?
No.
It's just
Not
a,
at this
It's just
point.
a
bridge?
It's a collapsed culvert that needs to be replaced according to stream crossing standards,
Okay.
so separate.
Off topic, yeah.
Off topic.
Thank you.
Are there costs associated with sediment disposal if you get into the sediment and find it's got some characteristics?
Absolutely. If you get in and find contaminants, and there's different degrees of how hazardous, and there would be.
And that's not
costs.
factored in here either, right?
It's not.
No, just
Okay.
the testing
And do you
costs.
anticipate
I don't
much of that?
anticipate, no, I don't. Not being a Framingham where you have people doing car changes and the truck spills that we have, I don't think we have that in this area. And I don't anticipate anything like that.
These are surface samples right on the top, so they're
Okay.
just fresh samples during dry and wet conditions, so you won't be going into years and years of things that may have happened.
That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything more from up here? Susan?
Yeah, you just said that the culvert on Wood, I realize this is a little off topic, but you just said it was a collapsed culvert on Woodland Street. There's an issue on East Goulding East.
Separate,
culvert, so now we have
separate
two?
one.
No, I didn't want to.
So there's two separate?
No, I just didn't want to correct. On Woodland Street, that correction is going to be taken care of when we pave that this year. On East Goulding, we do have a collapsed culvert. We're working with Conservation right now. We're going to be doing a box culvert in that area.
Okay, I just wanted to verify because I knew of one, not two. So,
And so that's not a culvert problem, you determined that?
On Woodland?
On Woodland.
No, we've got the road that had heaved up and it's never settled.
It's a traffic calming measure.
It sure is. Yeah, traffic safety might make you keep it there.
I just want to note a couple of things. One, I was questioning why were we purchasing the equipment to begin with. And talking to Ed, it's a lot cheaper to actually get this equipment than calling out an engineer to plot one of those points every time you want to plot a point.
Are there other towns that have this equipment that we could share with?
I don't know if we've looked at that.
I asked around, and they're not too forthcoming to lend out this expensive, specialized equipment.
I think that we could probably, we would have to pay somebody their time to be coming out. I mean, I would think another municipality would want to recoup something on it, but
Sure.
which would be cheaper than an engineer.
Well, and once we have one, then maybe we can make it work the other direction.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
make it
right,
available to other towns that might not have one.
We could
Yeah,
put that
and
word.
we're gonna be getting a lot of use out of this. Bridget's looking at doing her vernal pools and mapping those. She's dying to get out there and map all the wetland areas. I'm also gonna be utilizing it for, I'd like to get a layer on the GIS system for street signs. Traffic safety would be able to pull up real time exactly what street signs are where, tree inventories, things of that nature.
And this equipment provides a more accurate point than your cell phone would.
Sure.
It's sub-meter, so it'll be 6 inches off.
You know what club to use for the next shot? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah. But we will look at if that equipment could be farmed out, whether it's our guys going someplace and charging another municipality, and you can get out of that.
Gino, you've been thinking about the town's GIS system for at least 15 years, I know. I mean, is this system, I assume this system is going to be something that, A, is going to be, we're going to be able to update it and use it for some period of time, and B, it's adaptable to other uses, like Ed was talking about street signs, but maybe even things that are outside the realm of CM&D or wetlands mapping, other kinds of information.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a very common system in other towns,
Okay.
and it's very flexible. It's, in fact, one of the great things about it is that because of other towns using it, well, it's not so much the mapping as the system itself, but there's also these forms that other towns create that we can also use, that people can use to, town officials or people can use to document various items and map them. So.
This is a multi-layered system, this People GIS. It has 2 components. It has Maps Online, where Ed and other departments, planning, conservation, anyone who would love to upload shapefiles and geodatabases to the system can do that, and that information can be provided on either our individual websites for the public, if it's public information, or it can be provided on a staff site. The second layer is that they have people forms. What people forms are is it can be something like Ed already started doing potholes, where a resident can fill out, hey, there's a pothole on this street, and it automatically sends a response in Ed's email and says, hey, there's a pothole on Sawin Street or wherever, and so he can address it immediately. These people forms can be used for a multitude of services, building permits, interdepartmental approvals, dog licenses. There's a lot of things, emergency elderly locations for the police and fire. So there's a lot of layers that this can be used for, and it'd be really great if all the town departments could work together and they could use the people forms, because it would be really helpful to the residents.
And can you also...
And the map, this GIS system is very user-friendly, so it's easier for all the departments to pick up on it and make use of it, whereas like ArcGIS is much more steeper learning curve in order to use it properly. But we still have that as well that we can use, but for the general public and other town departments, it's much easier to use.
That was how that data was taken with the I did that in ArcGIS.
And is this system also compatible with the Mass GIS, municipal GIS?
Yes.
Oh, good.
We received their updates. It was, in going through the GIS selection process, this one was really a no-brainer. This system was lower cost, it was way more user-friendly than all the other ones out there. And our main goal here is the more people, the more departments that we can get utilizing this system, the more information we have and the more information people have access to. And this is going to be leading into a work order system. I really want to see it lead into a building permit system tied in with curb cuts, roadway, street opening permits, dog licensing, fire permits, all this. It's the information, if we can get it into the system, it's going to be beneficial and cost-effective to the town.
I'm sorry, I have to step away. I have a hearing.
Okay.
Thank
And thanks
you.
for coming in. Thanks for
Good
your
job,
work on this,
Bridget.
Bridget.
Thanks.
Elliot?
There are a lot of houses in this town that are numbered incorrectly, and maybe you could use this GIS system to park in front of someone's driveway, get a reading and say, this house should be this number. And there are many, many houses that are numbered incorrectly. I used to deliver mail in this town, so I'm very much aware of house numbers and incorrect ones.
Okay, thank you. Carol?
I just have a point of order. David, when you speak, if you're looking down, the microphone does not get your comments and they're inaudible.
Thank you.
Sometimes we like them inaudible, don't we? Poor Dave. Poor guy.
Got Pat upset, Paul.
You put it up here, you get the
Move the
high
microphone.
tones, you put it down here, you get the low tones.
Okay, I think that's it. We can wrap that up. Thank you.
I just,
Mike,
I'm sorry.
One more.
I wanted to point out that what we worked out was that Stormwater was kicking off the funding of the license, and we'll have to build it into the budget in future years. And if any individual department was looking for a department-specific use, like the dog licenses or building permits, that department would have to cover the cost of working with people at GIS to tailor a form from another town or start from scratch.
Okay.
And it can be up to, some of these could be up to $1,000 or $1,500 worth of design costs.
So we'll have to figure that out as
Department.
it goes along, if there's a good application for it or not. Yeah. All right, good. I think the next thing we have on here looks like Eagle Scout proclamations. I don't know, are any of our-
Mr. Chair, I don't know, you're 45 minutes behind schedule.
You know what? The handoff took place 45 minutes behind schedule,
that's
so I'm
probably
actually
what
on schedule. No, that's a good point. We'll move quickly.
Just
I move we
teasing.
adopt the two proclamations.
Okay.
I second that.
I've already made arrangements to deliver them.
Fantastic. And do you want to describe what these proclamations are, Paul?
There are two Eagle Scouts who are going to have their Eagle Scout Court of Honor, and these are pretty much the usual proclamations recognizing the work and accomplishments of the two recipients. These will both be read at the time of delivery.
Oh, jeez.
So I move that we accept it.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thanks, Paul.
I'll just say while we're signing them, just a point of reference that we have Frank Forrest Davidson V. And as I read this, he led a project to beautify the area behind the Sherborn Community Center and Unitarian Church for public use and as a place for pictures to be taken for special occasions. He cleaned the area, put in plantings that bloom at different times throughout the growing season, and constructed a granite bench for people to enjoy the view. And then secondly, Wesley John Gallant. He interviewed 9 U.S. veterans for the Sherborn Public Library, and will be submitting those interviews to the Library of Congress via the Veterans History Project. And the veterans he interviewed served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Grenada and Somalia conflicts. And I just have this because I prepared, not knowing what was
Fantastic.
going to happen.
No,
So, but these are great kids. It's one of the fun parts of the job.
And one of the things I've noticed just since I've been on the board was the number of these Eagle Scout proclamations we've done for a town our size. I don't know if we're turning out more than the usual ratio of Eagle Scouts. I know it's a very hard award to earn, so congratulations to these two Eagle Scouts and the others we've proclaimed in the past.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So we've got, the next item we have on here is the town administrator report, David.
Yes. First thing I noted here was I just wanted to point out that Nicaragua has beautiful beaches.
Beaches?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a reference to the Nicaragua comment earlier?
2014 annual town meeting, all of the, as you know, all the capital items had passed. So we'll start working on those. Two of them are kind of hung over from last year, which includes the transfer station and the fire department HVAC. Those, we've secured a licensed architect to work with us as a project manager on the fire department HVAC, which will make the whole thing go a lot smoother.
And that's within the same budget we'd talked about?
Within the budget, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I think actually there was 10,000 that was set aside for project management and looking to spend about half that, so.
Great.
The contractor he has the contract now, and it looks like he'll be starting in June, and it should be wrapped up by September.
Okay.
So, the transfer station, the engineer has already been out on site and designing the drainage system. So once we get that design back, then we can schedule the paving. Actually, the installation of the drainage system and then the paving. Two other items was the Woodland traffic safety will meet next week to consider a truck exclusion on Woodland, and that's as part of that project that was approved last year about Woodland Street and Goulding traffic calming.
But just to clarify, that we haven't taken a position on whether we reply.
Right.
Part of what the engineer's doing is exploring the applicability for a truck exclusion.
Right.
By reviewing what an application is, what's required in an application and
Right.
so forth. That's my understanding.
Yes.
Not that we have taken a position as a board that says, let's go file for a truck exclusion.
Right. The engineer will be at that meeting, answering questions from traffic safety, and any members from the public that are interested in that issue
And when is that
should
meeting?
probably go then. It's next Wednesday at 5:15.
Okay, in
this
Town
building.
Hall?
Yes. And then Western Avenue, we had an issue with the design over there, and we've been going back and forth with the engineer. And we have a current design proposed by them. The Western Avenue Traffic Committee hasn't met to approve this design, but I just wanted to point out that we have it in the Selectmen's office if anybody wanted to stop by and check
So was
it
there,
out.
were there extra fees for that revised design?
No, and that was the issue about going back and forth, that we said, we're done, we want a workable design and we can't pay any more for it.
What's the process from this point on?
Western Avenue Committee would meet to review this and see if that's what they want to put forward, and probably go to traffic safety and sign off on it, get their thoughts, and we could bring them back in here. Traffic, discuss it together again. I think we've done that one time before.
Good.
Yeah.
And then is it a selectman decision and vote? Is that how that gets implemented, or is it something that CM&D just implements based on the earlier town meeting vote? How does that work?
Yeah, the money, it would go off the vote from last year that approved the money for that purpose. So normally CM&D would go through, but, if we want to get a selectman sign off on it, that's...
Probably be a good idea.
Yeah, and I'm sure the committees would, want your input on that.
Okay. I know bike safety was a question the last time. Was that taken into account when they did this design?
This is hot off the press, so
Okay, well,
I can't tell. By
yeah, we can look at it
looking
another
it.
time.
Yeah, so we will schedule them to come back after the Western Avenue Committee and traffic safety have weighed in on it.
Okay.
So we have a schedule, David, you're going to walk us through anything here, but you have a schedule that was in the packet of capital items and then some other items to do.
Right.
Just a point of reference, some of the items where it says ballot vote, like command vehicle, transfer station, and farm pond management, I think those were ultimately free cash and so weren't subject to the ballot vote, right? Just to clear the
Oh, that's right, right.
details on this thing.
Yeah. Farm Pond and,
And so you're going to update us on those things, I guess, but I have a couple of comments at some point, Mr. Chair, when
Certainly.
you're ready for them.
I'm going to let David walk through these, or?
I'm going to have to leave,
Okay.
like around 8 o'clock.
And we got to talk quick then.
I have a chance to meet with my lawyer on a case that was sued on in my state role, so
Whatever you have to do, Paul, we'll try to wrap this up quickly.
Instead of the long, thoughtful things, I wonder if there are things that you needed, action items here.
So, David, do we have any action items?
actually, on this list, there are no action items.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out that the fire department, HVAC, and the transfer station are already underway. So that's,
So just, can you clarify for me, just because for the record, clarity, because the action items on the bottom couple here, right?
oh, right.
Right? Because those, just because I know we heard Carol talk and she's already planning to do stuff, but what
Right.
the voters approved was this, authorize the selectmen
To petition the
to do
legislature.
things, right?
Right.
And there were two items, one to get you to sign the warrants, and the other one, of course, to change the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5.
Right.
And if you remember from town meeting comments, I talked about the importance of, there's different types of people in town. One are the residents, and there's 4,000 plus of those. There's taxpayers, there's 3,000. And then there are somewhere between 200 and 300 or 400 folks that were voters, and the voters determine what happens. And our role is whether we think something should be done in the best interests of the community. So I just want to mention that.
Right.
In these two items that are, I certainly think having you approve warrants as it was described is a good thing.
So we included draft letters in your packets that would be
Right.
signed by the chair,
Right.
but the
Chair's changed.
the chair changed. So we'll have to revisit those letters.
Right, so I'm just deferring to the chair whether you wanted the board to take any action regarding the actions that need to be taken on these two items. That's all. To the chair.
To take any action on these items tonight, or to
Yeah.
defer until another meeting? What's
Your
your
call.
preference?
I'm happy to take action on these things tonight. I just was curious whether any others had any issues or concerns in the next 3 minutes while Paul's still
Yeah,
here.
I'm looking at the clock and looking at Paul's time schedule and wondering if this isn't something we have to put off.
Well, the one thing I'm concerned about is the appraisal for the land swap. I want to be sure that goes forward. This is for the Abbey Road.
And you think that's something that has to go forward tonight, Paul? Is there a timing issue, David, with this?
We want to get that project up and going for a couple of reasons. First, it benefits the seniors. Secondly, it puts property on the tax rolls and gives us all tax relief. And number three, we want to get a sidewalk built. And there is funding for a sidewalk now that the governor has signed in the transportation bond bill. So before I start lobbying for that money, we want to get the right-of-way secured.
Mhm.
So to me, there's some
The pro-
urgency that we get that.
And all we have to do here is approve the choice of the appraiser? Is that what we're looking to do here, David?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is put her to work. We'll pay her out of the legal budget.
And that's
And-
your only appraiser available that doesn't have a conflict and so forth, so it's
We
not much
started
choice, but
2
it's a
months
good-
ago, and this is the fifth
Yeah.
one that
Okay, and I mean, have you reviewed the qualifications? Do you have a
Yes.
recommendation on?
Yeah, she's a listed general appraiser with the state. She checks out, she understands the project, she's not tied to either side. I think she's completely independent and qualified to do it. I think the price of $2,500, I think at one time I said it would be $1,500 to $3,000, that's right in there. And I think she'll do a great job for putting a document together.
And how long have we given her to do that?
I can't remember how long she said it would be.
I don't think she did. I think she was just waiting on the approval.
It sounded like it would be a couple of weeks. It didn't
All right, I
sound
mean,
like a
but
long
let's
process.
try to tie her to a time frame for the
completion
report,
date.
so it's not open-ended.
Right.
We may be small fish on this person's docket, and we want to make sure we get her attention.
Yes.
So do we have a motion to approve the choice of
So moved.
Elizabeth Feckety as an appraiser?
Second?
Okay, all in favor? All right. Okay, so David, we've got the vote on that.
So would we want June, have the final document June 10th, or a draft
Sure.
by the end of, okay.
That makes sense.
Can we approve a collective bargaining agreement between the town of Sherborn and the Sherborn Police Association, Mass Coalition of Police Local?
This is a formal approval of the contract that was under discussion.
We've already approved it, though, right?
I think we approved it at executive session, and we have to approve it in
Right.
an open
You have to sign it in an open session.
open
after.
session.
Okay, but this, again, so I would second that motion with a friendly amendment, subject to further edits that are still needed here in words and so forth, because there are a number of questions that I had back in October, and there's, they keep popping up here, and there's some typos and so forth, so.
Well, if you're not ready to sign,
Well, I don't want to delay anything. It's not holding back. There's nothing of substance other than one that I'll point out, and maybe we should schedule an executive session versus discussing the contract terms.
yeah, we shouldn't discuss.
Right.
Is this, Peter, is this an issue on something that we thought we had addressed and it's still in this contract, or is this a new issue being raised?
Well, there are some changes that we, in the draft that we had reviewed back in October, and these were my comments, okay? That
Yeah.
some of the words have changed, and one of the numbers has changed, and plus some of the edits, which were more edits of, they mentioned folks that don't work for us and so forth. Most of those have been done, but there were some other edits for clarity of the words of the contract,
And I'm
not
going to withdraw
substantive.
my motion. But I would point out that we did sign already a change sheet
A term sheet.
that was going to provide the roadmap for
The edits.
the edits that were to be made.
Yeah.
So the basic business terms have been
Remain.
agreed to.
Yeah.
But certainly, very much appreciate your careful view of this language, and if there is a difference that you feel needs to be fixed, certainly I'll withdraw the motion for tonight. But taking the bigger picture here, it's important that we have settled contracts. It's important that we have employees who know what their contracts are and have them in place. This has been going on for a while, so I would encourage, by withdrawing the motion, I'm encouraging the chair to put it on the next meeting, or if necessary, an executive session to resolve any of those issues so that we could get this signed and delivered to.
Right. And I don't know offhand what those issues are
Right.
from Peter, but that's a good process. We should have this done. And I think the other thing, it's important to have contracts. It's also important to have, when we send these out for editing to our professional advisors, it's important to have accurate editing done. And I don't know, not having seen that, I don't know how that happened, but it's not good that 8 months after we thought we had resolved this, it's still not in final form.
This has been, it was referred out to the town attorney to work with the union attorney, and then once they came to agreement, it came back to each of us, and then the union made edits, I made corrections, went back to the two attorneys, and they reached a final document, and then the union ratified it, and that's the document.
The final
that's
document
coming
is
to
one
you.
that has different things in it, it sounds like, from what we.
Well, there shouldn't be any substantial changes as far as the
sounds like
terms of
there's
the
one-
contract.
There's a couple of little things in there that are questionable.
Then we
okay,
should have,
of some substance, not significant substance, but some substance. And then it would be helpful to understand, to the extent some of the suggested edits back from October that weren't made, why they weren't made. So
Right.
the executive session would allow us for that understanding.
right. So we should have the executive session and bring the
at our
council
next-
back in.
Whenever our next meeting is.
Yeah.
And do we have a date for our next meeting?
Yes.
We have,
29th.
we've been putting together an agenda for 5/29,
5/29,
but
okay.
the off
Yeah,
week
we-
is
I just wondered
5/15.
Right, we're on the 15th, so it's 2 weeks out, which is fine. Next week starts the Memorial Day holiday, maybe Thursday night's not a great time for some people, I don't know.
Okay.
That's an excellent point.
Okay?
So we'll bring the attorney into executive
And-
session
and I'll
on
give you my
the
comments
29th.
again.
Good.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Could I suggest another modification of the agenda to deal with the establishment of the borrowing time for the Seaman D
Yes.
vehicle?
Right.
That's another.
There's a memo in here, basically under statute, that says that you can go 5 years, but it also authorizes the selectmen to extend that up to the life of the product up to 20 years. So speaking with Ed, he estimated the useful life of the vehicle to be 10 or 11 years. So we were requesting the selectmen vote to set the borrowing at 10 years.
Okay.
So before we do that, just the treasurer gave us a memo here, and he says attached is a memo from Ed Wagner, but I don't see Ed's memo attached. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't know how critical it is. I don't have any problem with the motion that's before us, but it'd be nice to have all the information to make that decision.
Yeah, I'm not even sure why it's referring to a memo from Ed.
Ed, did you have a memo that suggested?
Simply said that the effective life of one of the one-ton dump trucks is 10, possibly 11 years.
Okay, and it's consistent with what this memo says.
Yeah.
I never saw it.
And David, your understanding of the process is that we just need to vote this. There's no
Yes.
hearing, there's nothing else we have to do.
No, you just vote to set
Do we
the
have a motion
borrowing.
on this, Paul? or-
So moved.
Okay, so
Second.
we should say the motion is that the maximum useful life of the dump truck purchased for the CM&D department, Article 8, Item 5 of the 2013 annual town meeting, shall be 10 years as allowed in MGL Chapter 44, Section 7-9.
I seconded that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay.
So then we have to sign something.
Do we have an original of that here for signature?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
No, we don't have.
We have this, Diane, right?
So just, I guess we should just remove one of these from the back of one of our packets and, well, no, we have, somebody's got an original because we've got
It's gotta be an
a
original
little yellow
somewhere.
sticker on this.
it should be in the packet there, isn't
I have a
Let's see.
police bargaining agreement and I have
it? All right,
a bunch of letters.
okay, let me go down.
Something
Let me
that's,
go
I would
down
just
again.
sign this one.
I can go down and get it.
well, I mean, let's sign something that looks like we should sign it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you?
Well, because I want to leave, if I could. Is there anything else that you think?
Well, I guess back to this.
voted, Peter and I can sign it.
Yes.
Okay, we voted.
Vote, so we can.
Okay. On the letters, we should go forward, even though we're just authorized, I think we should go forward.
And I agree with you on that, yeah.
But because we changed chairman, it should be in wording that the chair is comfortable with, rather than the wording that you wrote for you. Maybe he's perfectly comfortable with it, but whatever you want to do, but I think you should send it ahead to the legislature.
So why don't we move to authorize the chair, I make a motion to authorize the chair to sign 4 letters, it looks like, going to our state senator and our state representative Linsky regarding both these petitions, one to sign give the authority of the town administrator to sign the warrant, and the other to petition the legislature to allow the town to move from a 3-member board of selectmen to a 5-member board of selectmen.
Second.
Okay, discussion, anybody?
Just, again, we're authorized, we're not compelled, we're not required. I don't personally think it's in the best interest of the residents. However, why I make that motion and why I'm supporting doing it is a number of the residents of town who were also voters at town meetings, some very highly respected ones got up in favor of that, and I respect their opinion.
Okay. And I mean, I have a similar take to you in terms of the authority. I guess my concern is from the standpoint of authorizing rather than directing the selectmen to do something. When they authorize us to do something, I have to kind of vote my conscience what I think is in the best interest of the town. I'm not convinced that that change is in the best interest of the town. I think we've got 2 votes here, it looks like, to get these letters out the door anyway, so I would not vote in favor of that particular letter. However, I'll accept the direction of the board as to sending that. What I want to know is, Peter, if there's a like mind, at least with you on the board, do we want to separately have some communication with the state rep and the state senator just expressing our views on the matter?
I'd be happy to do that and support you in that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, I don't think it's in the best interest of the community. However, because of the voters, because of the caliber of the people that were supporting that, that's why I'm here, and I don't want to create huge waves by voting it down. Sounds like actions would be taken anyway. I think you've looked into the legal authority that others might have.
I don't know if
We're
we-
authorized by the voters to do it. We're not compelled. We're not, there's no shall.
Right.
And yet,
Right.
and yet, the town clerk goes and does it, you know? I don't get that, but that's nothing against the town clerk, of course, but.
No, I think what would happen is it would be a fight, and
Yeah.
there would be arguments on both sides. We don't need to waste
don't want
town
that, no.
resources on a fight. On the other hand, I think it's fair to express our views as the elected selectmen,
Yes.
if we differ on a policy matter.
And are we talking only about the 3 to 5 change, not the warrant?
Yeah, that's right. We
Piece.
still want you signing the warrant, too.
Okay, all right.
My two
That's fine.
cents is that I am a servant of the people. This chair that I sit in belongs to them, not to me.
Ask for a better chair, all that thing's falling apart.
That's for the next week's agenda. But because they voted for this, and I'm their representative,
Yeah, I guess the question is the fundamental question, who do you represent the most? Do you represent the voters, which oftentimes can be, you know, a finite group and small group subset of the population of the community? From my perspective, I look for what I think is in the best, just like Mike expressed, what's in the best interest of the community. And I don't think this is, but I also don't think fighting it is in the best interest either.
No, and as a matter of fact, the way this is structured, it comes back to town meeting for a later vote.
That's correct.
Before it's adopted by the town.
That's correct.
I did notice the
So we can continue that.
Southborough example, which was given as a rationale for this, is rather different in wording than ours, and it also was only adopted in 2013, so I suspect the jury's still out on how that works,
Right.
even in a bigger town like Southborough, but we don't have to get into that.
Right, right.
While we're talking about that, I've been talking with town council about the other article that amended the bylaw for the town administrator's job
Yeah.
description. So there's some stuff I want to communicate to you about
But I
that.
also heard the public comments earlier, way back when I was chair.
And we were on
that-
time.
Yeah, yes, that the town clerk was filing with the Attorney General all of the bylaw changes, which presumably includes zoning bylaws as well as this
Right.
particular bylaw. And I
Right.
guess that process happens.
Yeah, and what I've been talking to town council about is it amends the job description for the town administrator. Tells what the town administrator can and be involved in and not involved in as far as hiring or appointing.
Right.
That doesn't by default give some people authority. That's just a change in the job description.
Understood. Okay.
So, trying to figure out how to work through that.
So in some situations, there may be law that supersedes bylaw, particularly questionable.
There's statutory authority to some of those bodies, and some of the positions do not fall within that statutory authority. And without it being specified in bylaw, the responsibility would fall back on the Board of Selectmen. So we're trying to work through which positions those are, even though we understand what the intent of that article was. We need to figure out how to bring something to the Board of Selectmen, and it may be just in a policy of ceding that authority on those certain positions just to make them legal, but it's still to be looked at.
Okay, so Paul had to leave. We do have a few more things on the
Can I just go through
agenda.
a few questions on this list, Mike, just for
Oh,
David?
sure, you're still on the
Okay.
town meeting act.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay. The fire station presentation for the HVAC was different than what we saw.
Yes.
So it would be good if we could be provided whatever that presentation was, and then I think we could maybe just have a better understanding. They put up different numbers than we had talked about, and different than what were presented to us. The end result's the same, the end result's where we wanted to be, but the mechanics of it was confusing to me at town meeting.
I thought
Just
the
didn't
final
wanna-
presentations were distributed.
No, I don't think we saw the HVAC one. So, and it was different.
It did get changed last minute because some people were saying
Yeah.
that it was too long.
Yes, yes. So I just make that point, I think we want to just get a little more clarity on that. The other thing, the regional schools, you don't have the regional school ballot vote on this list. And that's one where because it involves the treasurer, involves funding under this intermunicipal agreement that took 47 years for the communities to get to. I just want to be sure that all our ducks in a row, that the treasurer's got the money, he's ready, willing, and able with the money to supply them as needed, which he claimed would be no problem when asked that question. So I just want to reemphasize that. Also, I would wonder, the OPEB funding, how and when and who does that? Because it's taking money out of the stabilization fund, and it's taking cash out of the general fund, it's putting 300 grand into this OPEB
And that's
fund.
post-July 1.
And I think that's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So that just happens.
I mean, it's a journal entry that the town accountant does, but she would consult with the auditors on what exactly that journal entry would look like.
Okay. And I don't know, because it's on this line item of the agenda, you have Pulte there.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's here or Selectmen's reports, but I'll just throw it here. I was invited to meet with Pulte.
Okay.
And I met with him Monday morning, and David met with him. Yeah, but, and it was the two Marks from Pulte. And they came in here to Town Hall. I thought one of the Gray family members was going to be present, but then they opted out. And just be sure we're communicating, and just to get a sense of where they're at. And I don't know if you have much to say, but it was a cordial meeting. I don't believe they're going away. I believe that we should expect to see a 40B filing come forth. I don't know how that will all shake out, but just doesn't look like they're going away too.
I just wanted to point out that we attended by invitation. It wasn't
That's
a
correct.
Board of Selectmen invite.
I was invited to be there.
Right,
yeah.
right. It wasn't our meeting.
And I didn't, I wasn't speaking on the air. So just to
All
let
right,
you know.
that's good.
Great, thanks.
Good to know. We have appointments on here, that's probably something we need to put off for the next meeting, David, unless there's
basically-
something we can do tonight.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to confirm that we were going to follow the same process as we did last year. And then I was thinking of advertising the existing vacancies and cutting off the receiving of the applications June 5th, and then having the review of the appointments on June 12th, the June 12th Selectmen's meeting. So that's the first time that you would have the consideration of actually making appointments.
Okay. And then...
I was going to say, the other issue is, if an incumbent seat is up and they decide to re-up, is that seat advertised as being up for?
I mean, I think we have to advertise it as a seat that's up for renewal at least.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that should be fair game for anyone. There's a
Okay.
seat that expires, it's open. There's an incumbent who's expressed interest, that's generally a good thing. But to the extent we have other alternatives to choose from, we should do that in the role that we play here.
So you would have a consideration of reappointing someone plus any new applications interested in taking over
I
that
think we
seat?
would typically take some, at least advice from the existing board chair in terms of that kind of a renewal. I don't think it's absolute deference. I know in the past boards of selectmen have gotten in some hot water when they didn't reappoint people, and
right.
That most of the time probably is the default action, but maybe not always.
Okay. All right, so we'll get those advertised so that we can have the applications back in time.
And I had asked to have the water study committee
Right.
discussion on here, and I guess without Paul here, maybe I'll discuss what I wanted to discuss, and then we can put it on the agenda for the 29th. Way back, and I can't tell you what date that was, Roger Demler came in and made a presentation to the selectmen about some of the past information studies and work that he and others have done in exploring the potential for a water system serving, a portion of our urbanized area downtown. And there's also a sewer study commission that's a committee that's been at work based on the Charles River Watershed Association grant that we received a year or two ago. The Water Committee met last week in conjunction with the Sewer Study Committee, and it was a good discussion of
some of the information we do have, what we don't have, and, some of the issues and considerations for either a water or a sewer proposal that might come forward at some point in the future. There was some requests for follow-up action on the water side in terms of surveying some existing property owners and some other work, and at least one of the members expressed some concern that that's not a formally appointed committee. So what I would ask the board to do, and the water commissioners suggested it be in a sort of a joint appointment format, that we would consider a slate of people who are actually the people that Roger Demler requested be on this committee, and we would formally appoint them to the Water Study Committee. And, by announcing it tonight, if there's anybody else out there that wants to come forward because they're interested in the subject, wants to serve on this subcommittee, I guess we would certainly consider them. I'll read you the names of the folks who were there the other night and who were on the committee. It was Frank Hess, it was Ed Rose, it was Eric Johnson, who's also on the Sewer Study Committee, it was Grace Shepard, and then it was the three water commissioners, Darrell Beardsley, Brian Moore, and Roger Demler, and myself.
Can Ed Rose be on a committee?
I think he could be.
I don't see why not.
He's a property owner in town, right, or
Yes.
businesses.
Not a resident.
Not a
He's not a
resident,
resident, but he's
taxpayer.
not, this is not a vote. Yes,
I can answer that question. An appointed person does not have to be a resident or a voter.
great, thank you.
Wealth of knowledge back there.
So was there were the water commissioners going to develop a charge, or were we just going to?
There is a charge, and I mean, I can read that now, or we can read it next week.
Next week's good,
Okay.
that's good.
Yeah,
had
I
the
think
same
that'd
question.
be better.
That we have a good charge.
Yeah, and
And then we appoint these people. I think that's terrific, that'll be wonderful. And I think it's a critical group, that's a critical group looking into big things. And so, and you mentioned Eric, he's on the planning committee as well, right?
He's on the planning board, that's right.
Planning board,
Yeah. And he's also on the sewer study committee, and he's also an engineer with
He's a great
a lot of
resource.
municipal experience, really hardworking guy.
Yep, that's great.
So we will handle it basically with the other appointments.
If we can do it on the
We're doing-
29th as an appointment, though, rather than wait till the 12th of
And that's
January.
in the joint session.
These are the
you
names
said.
you,
Yes, and
Oh,
the
I
reason
see.
for that, David, is because we're trying to keep to, roughly a monthly meeting schedule, and we're going to be meeting in June,
okay,
probably before we would have a chance to make those appointments at our June meetings.
okay.
So,
And we do that appointment jointly with the water commissioners.
yes, I think so, although Roger and Darrell and Brian may have already taken some action to appoint them, I don't know. So
Well, it's just a
depending
question
on...
whether it's a selectmen's appointment, committee, or it's a joint committee. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the way Roger conceived of it was as a joint committee. If you remember, he
Yes.
came in here to make a presentation to us, suggested the establishment of a committee. I think you and Paul suggested that I be the liaison to that committee, and Roger then invited some others in consultation with me. So, yeah, I think it would be a joint committee.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I was absent that night, but I've been involved in it before. Was there a role that I was?
Yes, and
Supposed to.
the idea was to have you and Gino as the staff to
Ex
this-
officio
to this
type
committee.
member.
Yeah,
Okay.
ex officio, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, great.
And, this whole GIS discussion, for example, I mean, that's another area that could be helpful in a project like this.
Right, right.
Can I just ask two, while we're on the TA report here, two things for David. One, how are we doing on the spending the extra 38 grand or whatever it was, the extra pothole money? Because that was time sensitive, as I recall.
Right.
We on track with making
Yeah,
good
there
use
was-
of that? And
Yeah, there were a number of smaller projects done with the pothole filling, but line striping is going to come
line
out of there.
striping and some fencing.
Yeah, line stripping hasn't started yet, has it? Or?
No, Ed gave me the date. It's in May, but I
Okay.
just don't have those.
So we're not to lose it, we're going to use it.
No, but you know what would be good, David, we should think about for, a future meeting and for next year is to have a schedule, an actual calendar with some of these items on it. So we do have established target dates ahead of time. Ed may have those already in his own mind, in his own calendar, but it would be
Right.
good to have them, something that we're all accountable to.
Right, yeah, so this is the first time that we're getting the line striping done
early.
And I know you
Calendar.
had suggested it's a great idea.
Yeah, so,
Some of these
Yeah.
lines are almost invisible at this point.
yeah.
But Mike, that also leads to sort of my last
Sure.
question. Yeah, I had asked Diane to get with David, start working on a master to-do list. 'Cause
A master
we can lose sight of all these things like, I don't know, Ruth's internal audit. We talked about that a half dozen times.
We've already
What's the
started working on it.
progress, you know? We had Harley in here tonight, who's going to come forward on some revenue ideas, but he was in here last time about this housing plan concept, and David and Gina were going to get together and come up with some concepts for us to digest and think about going forward. So it's all those types of things that we keep saying, well, if we could work on that. So a big
Right.
list with the dates,
Yeah.
I think is a great
Right,
idea.
and I think that's
So
a,
we don't lose track of this stuff.
yeah, we have a pile of things that are, keep getting kicked down the road, or
Yeah.
it's like machine gun fire that we can't zero in on. So I would advise that we start off with some sort of plan that we could plug these priorities into. You know, what the selectmen priorities are for the coming year, or what we want to accomplish. The water thing being one of them.
Sure.
And then there were a number of other policies that I think we should be getting moving on. So,
Personnel and otherwise policies that we can establish.
Yep.
Yeah.
oh, that's right, you did, those are on the 29th agenda that was
Good.
included in your thing. There were 5 or 6 of those.
Oh, I like getting this stuff early.
There's a
This is
29th
great.
agenda drafted in here?
No,
Excuse
just
me?
David has a copy.
Okay.
Of what?
29th agenda.
Oh, I thought,
We don't have it.
No, but I like the fact that it's already
Yeah.
being conceived and it's
We're working
starting to
on
wend
it.
its way through the process. That's good.
those were selectmen goals, meeting calendar for the year, leave notice, hiring appointment policy, personnel request form, and personnel action form. Those are the ones that we had it on that.
Okay.
And then there's others to follow.
And then the list of vacancies for the appointments.
Very good. All right.
We have a
do
couple of other items to add now.
You do?
Well, they're the ones that
Oh, the
we
ones
had,
we
yeah.
did, okay. So you have nothing further?
No.
Peter, anything further?
I think we have to, I make a motion to approve
Ah,
this
the warrant.
number,
David doesn't have
whatever
his
it is.
authority yet, that's right.
And it's subject to David's final review and subject to sign up by Recreation Commission on some part.
Okay. Anything else, David, that you saw that needs attention in this warrant? Or you haven't fully reviewed it?
No, I need to review it
All
tomorrow.
right, so that's a motion?
Yes.
So all in favor?
Yep, seconded and all.
I'll second it, all in favor. All right, great. I don't know how that worked with 2 people. But this-
Yeah, it works, it works. You're doing
Are we
great.
going to executive
You're a
session?
natural.
For the non-union contract.
I thought we were not going to executive session. Didn't we take that off the agenda?
Canon we took off.
We
We're
took
talking
Canon,
about-
that cell
Gotcha,
phone
okay.
issue off.
I wasn't the chair, I didn't have to really pay attention at that point in time.
Do you, I mean, we can reschedule that to
We
the
have a brief
29th.
discussion if you want,
Okay.
unless
Yeah,
you haven't looked at it.
No, I think we
But
can
it's
have a
on.
brief discussion. Okay. So I'm going to make a motion about executive session. I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to a non-union contract negotiation under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, and I so declare that having this discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the town's negotiation position. I need a second and a roll call vote to enter executive session, not to return to open session.
I second.
Peter seconded. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis absent. Mr. Gymo, aye. Mr. Caruso?
Aye.
Okay.
I applaud your adherence to the law on that.
Barbara has trained us very well on this, Carol.
You get the script, it helps.
Yeah, we've got a whole form with the script and the blanks right here. It's a great
Way
idea.
to do it.
There you go.
All right, so we're
Okay, so we're in executive session.
nicely done, Mr. Chair.
I'm way behind.